Another artist we're here to thank. Frank Yeschek, from the master you were born and reared. First you made a sketch so real, then you etched it into steel. Then on porcelain your design soon appeared. All in gold you made patterns that would never fade. Clever. And those designs that we celebrate here on the plate forever. Yes, I said forever. Frank and Joseph, two of a kind. Well, they're porcelain artists sublime. Yeschek is a name that stands out above the rest. Frank and Joseph, your work has made the ultimate test. So we have to compose.
Take it back.
And I thought Kathy's thing was I don't know if Kathy's interested in beginning her presentation, but we have, let's see, minimize it. Kathy Swink, yeah. But it was a good input into my lecture, but because half of it will be genealogy, and I think the other half will be China. As you know, I have interest in both, and I rely a lot on my grandmother, and that was Frank Yeschek's wife, Susan, because she knew German, and she was very much interested in family history, and asked all the old people who were old at her time, about all the family history. And so I'll be making some quotes from there, and some of them are on the paper, which you may have gotten already.
Does anybody else need a handout about Yeschek? Everything you ever wanted to know about him?
Okay, so with that beginning, I'll start. It starts in Bohemia, with Czech Republic now, or some people call it Czechia, and the old Yeschek, the original Yeschek homestead. I figure that these things are small. I do it on Google Maps. Is Horní Kalna, which is where he was born. There's a Dolní Kalna, which is a lower one, which they're both sort of a unit. He ended up, in terms of pursuing his career objectives, he went first to a place called Temni Dul, which at the time, this is an area which is obviously near the border with Germany. There were mixed population, and you had both German and Czech names for both areas. This was also called Dunkelthal, and it's interesting that upper and lower Kalna would be Horní Kalna, and upper would be Ober and Unter Kalna, so that's in German. And then he, final trip before going to New Bedford, which was a bit longer, was to Ellenorenheim, Lenora, which was the area of another glassworks. So that's some of the background of the next few slides. So he was born in a town near Horní Kalna. It's called Guntersdorf, which is now known as Hunterhof, in 1866. And this is early life he received. And this is his birth record. As you'll see, this is, so we have Joseph here, and you have his father Franz, and all these things you can find online. The Czechs are very good at putting this stuff up there. And J-E-Z with a hot check, it's a diacritical mark E-K, so that's a Czech spelling. Well, gee, why isn't he called Yeschek? Well, he opted to preserve the name because there's no Y in Czech, and the Z with the hot check is pronounced S-C-H. So in German it would have been J-E-S-C-H-E-K, and in English it's Y-E-S-C-H-E-K. So, and so he opted to change the name to preserve the pronunciation rather than the spelling. A lot of the names, if you look in the if Yeschek is fairly uncommon, pretty much anybody that you Google on named Yeschek is related to us, because most people just chose to make it Jeschke or Jezik or something like that. Oh, I gotta push this button now. I'll get used to this. And this is the other half of the certificate. Oh wait, where's that in here? No, what's going on? It's frozen here. Okay, no, there it is. Okay. This is his first communion. My grandmother saved that. There's in groblets. And again, you can go online and find cool postcards showing what the towns looked like at the time. And here's his Arbeitsbuch. This is an internal passport, which is really fun. It was, it shows all the places where he worked. And you can see here, he was in Hornicalma. This is the sort of the city seal here, and it was Hornicalma. And so Art was in the family. His my grandmother wrote his sister after Joseph Yeschek died in 1927. My grandmother wrote and said, well, you know, what do you know about the family? And his sister Carolyn wrote back, you know, there were 1 and 2 children. He was one of 2 children, so he had a sister Carolyn, and my father, that would have been Frank, and that would have been Carolyn and Joseph. Father was a textile artist. He had a shop with textiles, cotton and wool. There was never any notion of painting. In his youth, my brother wanted to learn to be a locksmith, and his study included drawing, to which he took a liking. He began his training, which lasted 4 years, in Dunkelthal, Temne, and in the mountains. My mom and I visited him often, but he couldn't get home much because he didn't have much time. So that's, you know, that's the story of how he got interested in painting, as told by his sister. Then we go to the next page of this passport, which again is a cool document. This stupid thing to move here. Let's see. There it is. Okay, just push the arrow there. And it's again, it's in Czech and German. And he's 7th of February 1866, Bukovina, which is a Czech name, over Hornicalna, they have from German and Czech. And this is his signature, and again, he signed it the Czech way. And this is a description. He had like green eyes, black hair, and this is just sort of, you know, before that you had to take a picture of it and reproduce it on your document. This is the town of Dolny Kalma. This is one of the 2 Kalmas. And this is the church. So we'll go check that out because we went over to visit it. If I can get this here. And here's you truly in front of that church in Dolny Kalma. And there's a lot of art in that neck of the woods. If you look at this church, which is, you know, it's a small little hamlet in the Czech Republic. This is the church, and you can look at the ceiling, the pulpit, and this is probably the baptistry where all the Yeschek, you know, the Yeschek ancestors would have been baptized. And this is probably where they would have all been buried, in a cemetery outside, and this is sort of the countryside. I had a distant relative who suspects that Yeschek is a very common name in the village, and which one of those places would be Yeschek, but he suspected this would have been the original Yeschek homestead. And it was interesting, right next door there's a business which, it's a foundry, and it does artwork. So we went and visited that. It's Vladimir, and you can see yours truly, and Vladimir's mom. And on the left is it's Vladimir, Marie, and that's the proprietor of the facility. And you'll recognize some.
Vladimir is the distant relative.
Yeah. Okay. And these are some of the things they make. It's a foundry. They make sculptures, a lot of sculptures all over the world. They have one like Westminster Abbey. They have one of all places, Providence, Rhode Island. And I have the website. You can look it up there. And this was not there back then because he came over after the fall of the wall from East Germany. But still, it just sort of shows it. You know, it's a nexus of art. There's kiln. He has molds here. He's making statues. Okay, so then we move on to Temne Dol. Now his passport showed where he worked, and the first entry in his passport was in 1879. He was born in 1866, so he first started learning to paint or his trade at the age of 13, down the road from his family. And again, like I say, you can find all kinds of people. This is a chimney from the glassworks. The whole thing was destroyed in a flood in the 1890s after Joseph left. From there, Joseph made his way across, I showed you that big line, to what was then Eleanornheim, which is named after Eleanor, who was the spouse of somebody who founded a big glass factory there. This again is Eleanor. And actually, I had this picture, I emailed it to somebody who likes to do research on that city, and he said that was the earliest one he had ever seen of the village. It was before they put the railroad in, but there's the chimney of the foundry there. And this is the flag of the village, so you sort of know what their major industry is. And this is what they did, and it's very similar to what we saw at the museum. You see they're making glass. This is from their website. I have no idea if it was from Yeschek's time, but it shows. And this is the kind of product they produce. It's like Lotes, L-O-E-T-Z. And I'm sure it's ridiculously expensive. So again, this is glass. Again, I pilfered this off of the internet. So then he goes to Ilienornheim, and he starts working in the glass factories there. Now, Marie Copeland, she came from a factory working in the glass factories there. And what had happened was her parents both died of tuberculosis when she and her sisters were little kids. And tuberculosis, when you have silicosis, it makes you exquisitely sensitive to tuberculosis. And that was a cause of death if you go through their books. But you know, many people in that neck of the woods because they all worked in glass factories. So, she got the sisters, the three girls, got farmed out to their aunts and uncles out there, and Anna, the daughter, was she ended up with a mother. Her uncle worked in the factories, and her mother ran a bakery. And the bakery was one that the glass artist frequented, and that's how she met Joseph Yeschek. So Joseph Yeschek came to the thing, and so they ended up getting married, and they had one child who died in infancy, and then the oldest son. The second child was Frank Yeschek, and I think I went too far. But this is his birth entry. So there's Frank with the old spelling, and on the bottom, if you look, it says on the 11th of November, 1912 in Chicago. It shows that he married Susanna Kleifkin. So they obviously kept in touch with the old country because there's a slow entry. They didn't want to come back and get married again to someone. So, that's his birth, and again, that's online. I can give you the link if you really are interested. But at this christening, and the christening, if you look, let's see, if you look at the old passport, the godfather was was the guy who Joseph Yeschek was working for at the time, because Joseph was not there when Frank got christened. And the story there was sort of stated by, again, my grandmother wrote to Marie Copeland's sister. Frank's mother married very young. They had a hard time, not enough to eat, wages very small. That's why Frank's father left. They wanted him to serve in the army for 3 months. He slipped away to come over here. She was living in America at the time, the sister. And when the gendarmes were looking for him, he was on the steamer, almost in America, so they could not do anything. He sent for Frank's mother in a few months. I think Frank was a few weeks old. She stopped at my aunt's place overnight on the way here. I slept in the same room. Frank cried all night. I was glad when she left in the morning because I could not sleep and I had to go to school the next morning. So they made contact. They maintained contact, the three of them. And here now, so Frank ended up going to New York, via New York to New Bedford.
Joseph went.
What? What?
So Joseph?
Joseph went to New York and sent for, Joseph went and Marie was pregnant with Frank at the time. So she had to wait there to give birth because, Joseph didn't want to go in the army. So there was some urgency to him leaving. So he had Frank over in, as you saw in the birth certificate, in Bohemia. And then then she followed him off to New Bedford. And they made new life there. There is Joseph, Marie, and then their New England house. That's Frank. That is son Billy, who ended up doing real estate in northern Wisconsin, and Mary, who actually was an amateur china painter herself. So in New Bedford, Frank, let's see here, his family grew. Here you can see you have, again, Joseph, Marie, Frank, Mary, Billy, and then you have Alice. Alice ended up in Tucson, Arizona, so that's where. And so in New Bedford, this is the courthouse where he would have had the building. If the building were in existence, he would have become a citizen there, and we saw that in Providence. It's now the visitor center of the Whaley Museum. Here is his citizenship paper from New Bedford. And what happened is, of course, you had Anna already there writing letters, and you had Marie, and the third sister, Bertha, she figured she'd come over too. So she came over, joined Marie and Joseph in New Bedford, and she ended up after one of his co-workers, one of Joseph's co-workers, the noted Pierpoint artist Frank Guba, here, had his first wife died, so he married Bertha Copeland. So they were all in the same industry. They all decorated china, and this, I can show you this vase up here. They came and visited Chicago. This vase up here was painted by Gasper, so that's, you know, but that I hate it. We have and the Gubas stayed in New Bedford, and the Yescheks ended up obviously making their way to Chicago via Philadelphia. So go to the next slide here. Now, when we were in New Bedford, we saw some of the Gubas work. This is the type of stuff he did. This is in the New Bedford Museum of Glass, and these were in the Whaling Museum. These are examples of his work. So
just to clarify, Guba was related to Yeschek through the wife. So Joseph Yeschek's wife, Marie, her sister married Guba.
Genealogy is lots of fun and complicated, but okay, so yeah, we got this is a familiar pattern. This is in the Corning Museum, and it was done over there. So there was a lot of filching of designs from. This is the praying Mohammedan, as New Bedford would have done it.
Who was the artist on that?
That wasn't Guba. I think it was unsigned. And again, if you look at the pictures, it's very similar to the pictures in the old factory. These were things, and you have the group pictures. And this is one where my grandma had this, so I'm assuming Joseph Yeschek is somewhere in there. I was sort of wondering maybe there, but you know, it'll be hard to find him in there. But again, these are all from the New Bedford area. He stops in Philadelphia and he ends up in Chicago. This was he was doing it on his own. Most decorators had side businesses. And he came to Chicago, and if you see, he's working on a deserted garden plate. All these things are in deserted garden. I think that's Challen, or that might be Florence James. So that was the classic Picard picture. This is Joseph Yeschek. I think this is Gasper. I mean, we might.
Yes.
But yeah. Okay. So that's there's a picture of the artist. So this is him at Picard. And now, of course, we got to get into the China part of the presentation, because we probably bored you with all kinds of, you know, genealogical stuff. He ended up he first appears in the Chicago directories in 1903, and these are the only three pieces I've come across with the 1898 to 1903 mark done by Joseph Yeschek. This is the Tulip Garden, Carnation Garden, more of a variant, and then this Grapes Pattern, which is reminiscent. Yes, he's had some other stuff done in that. Now, when you collect a particular artist, it sort of gives you maybe a little bit of insight as to, how they approach their patterns, some, the diversity in styles and what they thought, and their, just their artistic approach. And it also gives you an idea as to how maybe the patterns were assigned. So this one here shows that sometimes the artist had their bad days. This is a classic Yeschek Raspberries plate, and if we go here, you see he misspelled his name, so yeah, bad day, so so we don't go there. And then, so poppies, we'll look at poppies. You can see the different styles of poppies. None of these were his pattern. This, I think, is more of a Fuchs pattern, twin poppy. This is the, the red poppy background. The three in the back were Gasper patterns. These are all signed Yeschek. All this stuff I'm going to put in here was signed Yeschek, except later. I'll tell you when they weren't. And again, this is poppy patterns. Again, different types of styles. How, and this sort of shows sort of the spectrum of Picard painting. These were obviously they were popular because they were Gasper patterns and Fuchs pattern. Yet there was enough demand that they had other artists doing them. This is one where you have both of them. You have like the red pattern here, and then you have the Fuchs thing in the middle. So, and this is by Yeschek too. This was one, when Yeschek did things on his own, he typically would not, filch he wouldn't make off with the card patterns. He would play around with it. And this is something that was passed down the family. And it was on its own. There's no Picard mark, but again, Yeschek. This is a dresser set, and again, it's Poppy and Daisy, but not really. You know, it's not the Picard version. Now written the poinsettias, they did poinsettias. This is 2 variations of poinsettia and luster, and I suspect this may have been his early version of that. And then you have what they have identified based on a label as poinsettia and ruby. So this is, and these patterns I'm pretty comfortable. I've never seen any artist do these patterns other than Yeschek. So it may mean they were not as popular. It may mean that, you know, it had to do with the skill set. I don't know. But then we move on. This is a painting that was not done by, this is not here with Picard mark, so it's different than the other Picard stuff. But you can start seeing like the stamens. It's not as natural as the other ones. And then you start seeing this variation here. This is a Picard, and this is a Picard. And ultimately became poinsettias in black. This pattern, I'm comfortable with pretty much everything here being done by Yeschek. This one, Lowe would do examples of that too, so he shared that with Lowe. So, then we'll go to cornflower conventional, and again you have variations. He did different colors, and he did, this is a cornflower conventional, but now you see this little thing coming in. You have the cornflowers are in the border and they're popping out, so that's sort of, and we go to the next picture here, you have the cornflowers in the border. These are here, and this is the old version, and then there's what I think Alan called cornflower conventional lavender. This pattern was often done by Koenig, but most of the stuff was Yeschek. This I think was pretty much exclusively Yeschek. I don't think I've seen anything by any other artist. Now we'll go to somewhat of a variation. Again, I'm sort of trying to group them by, you know, our similarities.
Hey Harry, just a quick question. When you go back to the cornflower, do you find as much of it unsigned as you do signed?
Yeah, it's often unsigned. You know.
Do you have any idea about that?
I have no idea why.
It's funny though.
Yeah, it is funny. You know, maybe that the unsigned stuff was done by another artist, or maybe he just missed out on doing it. The other interesting thing about his signature, Joseph would sign things in 2 ways. He would either go JY or he would go Yeschek. And I'll go back here since I have the time here. This pattern here, he inevitably initialed it JY. And it's interesting because if you look at Gasper, you know, he'll typically sign it PG. You know, I mean, it's, for whatever reason, it's very pattern specific, the patterns he initialed, with some exceptions. But yeah, and then this thing here, Koenig did a lot of this here. I'd say I'm guessing these were Koenig patterns, and you can see instead of going from the gold border out, this variation of cornflower conventional, you know, the flowers go into the border as opposed to, let's see, I'll go back to the one here. See here they're in the border and they're going out, and then you go here and they're going in. And that's a Koenig version of it. This is Bluebells, done by Koenig and Yeschek as well. Of course, Deserted Garden. There's a lot of variations here. You can have it with etching, you can have the spray here. They do peaches, and you do plums, and then you can have it all gold in the middle. Or you can have little sprays going down with the Deserted Garden. Here, you know, the identical blank, both of them painted in Deserted Garden, but they're, you know, totally different. You know, it's sort of interesting. You know, again, I put these together because they're variations. And here's another, again, identical blanks, but you have, you know, different fruits here and there. You have currants and you have peaches. So, you know, to be honest with you, I think Alan attributed Deserted Garden to Marker. My tendency is to think it was actually a Yeschek pattern, unless he had something I didn't know, simply because I think Yeschek did more of it than Marker, and I don't know that Yeschek would have had his picture taken painting Deserted Garden, you know, if it was Marker's pattern, you know.
It was also the pattern he used to give as a gift to his
Right, now that'll be further on, yeah.
But I'm just saying that was a special pattern.
Yeah, it was a special pattern for Yeschek. So this is another pattern, which is, if you look in the Ellen Reed's book, it was one of those identified as Yeschek, currants, and gold, and this piece was. This is a variation. Again, you have it without all the spritziness in the border, and then this is Yeschek, currants, and paste, and I sort of put it in because of the similarities. This one has paste work in the border, And they're all Picard, they're all signed Picard, but they're, just variations on a theme in my mind. You have the same fruits, but not. These are, here you have a similar, I would say similar treatment of different flowers, I guess is what I put it. You have red tulips and yellow tulips, you have yellow tulips and white tulips, you have triple tulip, which I'm comfortable that anything in triple tulip is a Yeschek. This is an unusual pattern. I only come across 2 pieces, but it's a similar thing with, I would call them chrysanthemums. And then you have lily ornatum, and your lily ornatum was done by Yeschek, but also by an artist, Bulett. I've seen those 2 artists do it. This is one in Alan's book, which I had to filter from his book because I've never come across any of it, but he did something similar with peonies.
Is that Yeschek too?
That's Yeschek. Again, now strawberries, I figured, well, gee, look, this is sort of the classic strawberry pattern, which was also done by Fuchs. It was a Fuchs, and I'm not sure who originated the pattern. Here's sort of a less intense version, and then we have sort of a moving along with the border, and then we have all the frills in the border, strawberries. And then, okay, now this thing here, now, I have examples of Yeschek doing other people's patterns, and he did a fair amount stuff like Poppy and Daisy. These are the only examples I have of Yeschek doing these patterns. This was typically done by Tolley and Gifford, but this is signed Yeschek. This was done by Fuchs and Fisher, and this is signed Yeschek, and this is typically an Otto Ghost pattern, and this is signed Yeschek. And I've never seen any other pieces in these patterns by Yeschek. And this is a piece where this pattern was done by Otto Schoner, but again, Yeschek sort of participated in that. He also was involved in these. He also did these patterns, which maybe people think of as, I think this is more of a Gasper, Vabornik, Schellner. These are later pieces, and I just put those out because medallions and florals. These are, he also went in and did scenics. Very unusual for him to actually do vellums. He was more in the Italian garden and Castlemere. But this is, you usually see Rollins, sometimes Challenor in this pattern. It wasn't really his pattern. This is sort of a Gasper did this, Challenor and Marker, and this thing here was a sort of a Challenor, Marker, Verbornik thing. So, but they're nice, and when I come across them, they had diversity to the collection simply because he didn't do much of it. These again are more these are the medallion scenics. And this is I'm not sure if there is a title for this pattern, but it's a little bit different than the Italian garden. This, if you go through Alan's book in great detail, it's Ruri Iris Conventional, I think they call it. And so it's a Ruri pattern. I would say I've seen a substantial amount of this by Yeschek, although it is a rarely found pattern. So if you come across this, it's going to be either Yeschek or Ruri. These are other patterns, primarily done by other artists. All these are by Yeschek. This is a Gasper pattern, this is a Fisher pattern, and this is Argenta Linear. Yeschek even popped out a few of those. This is one of those he would typically sign JY, although sometimes he would slip up and write Yeschek out, because these are typically the Argenta Linear. For whatever reason, he signed JY. Now, of course, if I give Deserted Garden to Yeschek, I have to take away something. I think this might be more of a Schoner pattern. I see Schoner and Blazek. Yeschek did it. He did a lot of it. And when he did this pattern, he did JY, the Easter Lily pattern. Gorgeous pattern. And then he did all of these. This is a Gottlieb pattern, and he did that Yeschek. These are Picard pieces, and they were done by Yeschek, but it's typically done by Klitman. This, my grandmother, we got this for our wedding from my mom, but there's a little note on the back that says, Joseph painted it and Frank etched it, so, this is a family piece. These are 2 items, and I don't think he took the pattern from anybody because I've never seen the patterns anywhere else. This is a pattern this is Yeschek, and this is Yeschek, but, so he did roses and he did these kind of flowers, but they're unique. I mean, I've never, seen that pattern anywhere else, and it's the only one I've come across by Yeschek or anyone else. These are probably less well-known patterns, which, if you come across them, were probably inevitably done by Yeschek. This is a another carnation pattern, which is, this is a JY pattern, he did JY. This is a grapes variation. If you remember way back when I had that grapes thing, this is another grapes pattern, which whenever I see it is done by Yeschek. And then this thing here, I've seen one done by Walters, but all the other ones in this particular poppy pattern are done by Yeschek. So this is a jardiniere. This is something he did on the sign that's obviously on the side, which is obviously not a Picard pattern. And of course, he's known for lily ornatum. And one thing so then he did, it's fun to see how they played with the blanks. He did some stuff on the handles, some paste work, and he has a little, I could probably do it. I could get photos all over the place, but he has a little lily up here on the rim, and then the way he decorates these two pieces. The one thing here is this one does not have a Picard mark, so he obviously has modified it a bit so it doesn't look like Picard. So in my experience, again, like I say, he typically did not steal Picard patterns on the side. And then, of course, for the stuff everybody likes, this is Carnation Garden. Tulip Garden, actually, we got a Tulip Garden. And I just throw in some miscellaneous patterns. If you look at the book, this is Yeschek crab apples. That's an identified pattern. And this probably is an earlier version. He doesn't have as much gold or that, but it's a plate I came across and it's sort of unique. And then this is a later pattern, which is a little bit more stylized. And then I throw these together because you sort of have a similar treatment of cherries and of strawberries. If you see here, when he omitted the inner gold ring here, so it's always fun to look for these little things that happen there. Fruit panels, this was done by numerous artists. This could have been Yeschek, but it could have been Folkwell, Messy. A lot of people did this pattern, so that's another one.
Those are signed Yeschek.
These are all signed Yeschek, yeah. And these are all signed Yeschek. This is a JY pattern. He typically initialed a JY. And this is Yeschek Strawberries in Gold, I think. He only had an official name for it. And this is this one he spelled right. This is his raspberry pattern. Yeschek. And I'm pretty comfortable, and I see this pattern that Yeschek did this because for whatever reason, I haven't seen other people do these kind of raspberries. And of course, everybody wonders, what did his dining room look like? Well, this was Joseph Yeschek's dining room here. And this rose plate my Aunt Marie has. It's not the greatest photo, so it's hard to really make out stuff. Now we're getting down to, well, we talked all about Joseph Yeschek and his China painting career. What about Frank? Well, Frank, they sent him off to work. This is on when is this thing? He was like 14, guys, 14 years old. He started working in China, and that's 1905, which sort of corresponds to the only mark where Frank's pieces appear. It's in 1905 to 1910, and that's on Yeschek currants and gold. Now he married, there's Frank, his wife Susan Kleifkin, and I think that might be Bill Yeschek and Marie or something. No, it's Henry Kleifkin and I think Marie Yeschek. So, or Mary Yeschek, that's his sister. So, and of course
Mary is the one that was again